IT or cybersecurity, everything eventually comes back to the network. The slow application, the unreachable server, the odd alert in a security console, they all trace back to how devices are connected and how traffic flows between them. This narration is part of the Monday Certified feature from Bare Metal Cyber Magazine, and it focuses on the CompTIA Network Plus, NETWORK Plus certification as a practical early career milestone. The goal is to help you decide whether it belongs on your roadmap and to give you a mental picture of what it really proves once you earn it.
If this certification is on your study list, a free and complete audio course is available in the Bare Metal Cyber Academy at baremetalcyber.com, complete with a study guide and a second ebook featuring 1,000 flashcard questions.
At its core, Network Plus is about turning scattered hands-on experience into a structured understanding of how networks actually work. Maybe you have been the person everyone calls when the Wi-Fi feels slow, the VPN is unreliable, or a new user cannot reach a file share. You may have picked up commands and quick fixes, but still feel like there is a hidden layer of logic you have not fully seen. Network Plus steps into that gap. It pulls together concepts, tools, and troubleshooting habits so that you can see the network as a system instead of a collection of problems.
One important thing about Network Plus is that it is vendor neutral. That means it is not tied to a single brand of switch, router, firewall, or cloud platform. The content is designed to apply whether your organization uses one vendor today and another tomorrow, or a mix of everything at once. For you, that neutrality makes the certification a good investment early in your journey. It builds a foundation you can carry into more specialized tracks later, whether that is a particular vendor's networking path or a security-focused certification that assumes strong network fundamentals.
The people who get the most value from Network Plus tend to sit in a few common roles. They might be help desk technicians who are tired of just resetting passwords and want to take greater ownership of connectivity. They might be junior system administrators who maintain servers and virtual machines, but need to understand the switches and links underneath. They might be early security analysts who can read alerts and logs, but want deeper insight into what traffic should look like when things are healthy. If you recognize yourself in any of those descriptions, Network Plus aligns well with your day-to-day world.
CompTIA is the organization behind Network Plus. It is an industry association that has been building IT certifications for many years, and it sits outside any single product company. That position gives CompTIA a broad view of how real organizations design, secure, and operate their networks. They consult with employers, practitioners, and subject matter experts to define what someone in a junior network role actually needs to know. That input shapes the exam blueprint. So when you see a topic on the test, it usually reflects work people are doing in the field, rather than just theory.
CompTIA's name carries weight in job descriptions and conversations with hiring managers because their certifications map closely to recognizable roles. When a manager sees Network Plus on a resume, they generally read it as a sign that the candidate understands networking fundamentals well enough to contribute to production environments with guidance. It does not claim senior expertise, but it does say you have moved beyond basic turn it off and on again support. In many teams, it is the first credential that separates general IT helpers from those who can take ownership of connectivity problems.
The certification also evolves over time as wireless standards advance, as more workloads move into the cloud, and as security expectations rise. CompTIA revisits the domains and adjusts the weight of topics. That keeps Network Plus from becoming a frozen snapshot of how networks looked a decade ago. When a new version of the exam appears, it usually reflects updated best practices and emerging patterns, such as more focus on remote connectivity, segmentation, and basic hardening techniques that you are likely to encounter on the job. When you sit for the Network Plus exam, you will see a blend of traditional multiple-choice questions and more interactive, scenario-based items.
On the surface, it can look like a straightforward test of facts, but the design goes deeper. The questions are organized around broad domains, such as concepts and protocols, implementations, operations, security, and troubleshooting. Under each domain, you will encounter small stories and exhibits that ask you to interpret what is going on and choose a sensible next step, rather than just recall a definition.
For example, instead of asking you to recite a port number in isolation, a question might describe a remote access issue and present partial information about configurations or firewall rules. To answer well, you need to connect what you know about protocols, topology, and user symptoms. The exam rewards the habit of stepping back, identifying which layer or component is most likely at fault, and then picking an action that addresses the root cause. In that sense, it tests your ability to think like a junior network professional, not just a student who memorized a chart.
Another recurring pattern in the exam is movement between different views of the network. You might see a logical diagram that shows segments and links, a routing table or switch output, or a monitoring snapshot with alerts and statuses. Being comfortable reading those artifacts is just as important as knowing the underlying concepts. Network Plus checks whether you can interpret what the tools are telling you and then relate that information back to your mental model of the environment. The exam also quietly evaluates how you function as part of a team. Questions about documentation, change management, and escalation might feel soft compared to pure configuration tasks, but they reflect reality. In most organizations, networks are built and maintained by groups of people who depend on shared diagrams, tickets, and logs. The ability to understand an existing procedure, follow a troubleshooting process, and leave clear notes behind for the next person are all valuable skills that Network Plus is designed to encourage.
When it comes to preparation, it helps to think of Network Plus as an intermediate-level challenge. It sits above an entry-level support exam, but it is still very achievable if you give yourself enough time and structure. Many candidates have between 6 months and a couple of years of experience in support or junior administration roles. If that describes you, your study plan is less about starting from zero and more about organizing and deepening what you already see at work.
A simple way to organize your preparation is to move through a set of phases. First, you solidify core concepts, such as IP addressing, subnets, ports, protocols, and basic topologies. Second, you focus on implementations, including how switches, routers, and wireless access points are chosen, connected, and configured in small to mid-sized environments. Third, you look at operations and security, including monitoring, documentation practices, and fundamental hardening steps. Finally, you build your troubleshooting muscle by practicing a repeatable process for diagnosing issues and learning to read symptoms in context. Within those phases, different types of study activities reinforce each other. Reading or watching a course gives you structured explanations, but you should pair that with hands-on time whenever possible. A simple home lab with a few virtual machines, a small router, or a spare switch can go a long way. So can cloud-based labs or simulators that expose you to common interfaces and commands. The goal is for the outputs and diagrams you see on exam day to feel familiar, almost like you are looking at a snapshot from your own environment rather than an abstract example.
Practice questions have their place, but they work best after you have a reasonable grasp of the domains. At that point, they become a tool for checking your reasoning, not just forcing more facts into short-term memory. When you work through sample questions, pay attention to how the scenarios are framed and which clues matter. Review the explanations carefully, especially for questions you answered correctly but for the wrong reasons. That review helps you align your thinking with the logic the exam writers expect.
Your study plan does not have to live only at your desk. The Bare Metal Cyber Audio Academy course for Network Plus gives you another way to absorb and reinforce the material. You can use it during commutes, walks, or gem sessions to revisit topics you covered earlier in reading or labs. Many people find that cycling between visual and audio explanations deepens understanding and keeps concepts fresh without adding more screen time. Over a few weeks, that steady, layered exposure can build real confidence.
As you prepare, it is also worth thinking through the test day experience itself. Know how long the exam will last, how many questions you can expect, and roughly how much time that gives you per question. Have a plan for how you will handle puzzles that slow you down, such as marking them for review and moving on to easier items. Build a small routine for the last few days before the exam that focuses on light review and rest rather than heavy cramming. Approaching the test with a calm, familiar rhythm often matters more than squeezing in one more fact at the last minute.
From a career perspective, Network Plus sits at an inflection point. It can mark the transition from a purely reactive support role into one where you help design and maintain parts of the environment. Hiring managers often read it as a sign that you care about understanding the bigger picture, not just closing the next ticket. In interviews, it gives you a built-in structure for talking about your skills. You can describe how you learned to map problems to layers, how you approach troubleshooting, and how you think about documenting solutions for others.
Network Plus also interacts well with other certifications. A common route for broad early development is to pair it with general IT and security credentials, creating a foundation that covers endpoints, networks, and core defensive concepts. If you discover that networking is your favorite part of the job, you might use Network Plus as a springboard into vendor-specific tracks that go deeper into routing, switching, wireless, or software-defined networking. If you lean toward security, that same foundation makes it easier to interpret packet captures, intrusion alerts, and firewall logs.
Of course, no single certification is right for everyone. If you expect to spend almost all of your time in cloud-native environments, you might pair or sequence Network Plus with an associate-level cloud exam that emphasizes virtual networking. If your role is skewed heavily towards systems, storage, or identity, you might choose to borrow Network Plus resources to strengthen your fundamentals without immediately sitting the exam. The important thing is to look honestly at your current responsibilities, your next target role, and the kind of signal each certification will send in that context. Taken together, the value of Network Plus lies in clarity. It helps you see networks as something you can reason about and shape, instead of a mysterious background service that either works or does not. It gives you a shared language with more experienced engineers and a way to frame your growth when you talk with managers and peers. Combined with real-world experience and ongoing learning, it becomes one piece of a broader story about how you are building your career.
If you already find yourself drawn into network-related issues at work, earning Network Plus can be a powerful step. With a steady, well-structured study plan, some hands-on practice, and support from resources like the Bare Metal Cyber Audio Academy, the exam becomes less of a hurdle and more of a checkpoint. It marks the point where you move from guessing and improvising to understanding and explaining. And once you can do that reliably, new paths open up, whether you choose to deepen your networking expertise or carry that understanding into security, cloud, or other areas of infrastructure.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.